everyone. This is Steve Marinucci, freelance writer on Billboard.com, Variety.com, Access, and other publications. Welcoming you to another session of Things We Said Today, our almost relatively weekly show where we talk about nothing but the Beatles, past, present, and to come. Let me introduce our two co-hosts. First, from the state of Maine, who is enjoying sunshine and 80-degree temperatures right now, I'm sure. Our musicologist who wants to know why Kendrick Lamar got a Pulitzer, the author of The Beatles from the Cavern to the Rooftop, Alan Cozen. Hello, Alan.
Hello, Steve. Hello, everyone.
We're not going to debate that today, right?
Kendrick Lamar, no.
No, okay. And from the state of Connecticut, the host of the syndicated show, Every Little Thing, Mr. Ken Michaels. Hello, Ken.
Hello, Steve. Hi, everybody.
We have a special guest today. We're welcoming back after a long absence, Kit O'Toole. Hello, Kit.
Hi, Steve. Hi, everybody. It's great to be back.
Okay, and I'm going to run through. We're going to run through the news real quick, and then we will get to the main part of the discussion. We have several news items. First of all, this past week, BMG announced that Ringo Starr has signed an exclusive worldwide publishing deal with them, covering his songs from his Beatle days and his solo catalog, which is really kind of interesting that the Beatle catalog is in there too. And
it's only two songs.
Well, I mean, the fact. Well, not according to this now.
Yeah.
According to the press release says what goes on, flying, don't pass me by, Octopus's Garden,
right.
Dig It, and Maggie May, and including Susie Parker. Wait a minute.
Interesting.
What?
Susie
That's
Parker.
Beatle rarities, including Susie Parker. Christmas Time Is Here Again, 12-bar original, and Lost Paranoias. I'm reading right off the.
Wow.
Interesting.
So they're including his interests in things that they're credited all for.
Right.
So it's like really 25% of those songs.
But I'm curious. I mean, that's the first time I've ever heard anybody.
That's true.
Parceling out Beatles songs that way.
So I wonder, if someone decides to record, as I think the Smithereens did, Christmas Time Is Here Again, they have to deal with two publishing companies.
It looks like it,
Maybe even three at this. No, two. Yeah. One for the,
and
ATV.
one for Harrison.
Yeah.
One for Harrison, yeah.
That's right. Oh, man.
I know. This is getting really complicated, isn't it? But in any event.
The Smithereens recorded Christmas Time Is Here Again?
I thought they did. Maybe they didn't. Didn't they do sort of a Christmas album that had stuff like that on it?
Somebody recorded a cover of it.
Somebody
remember.
Yeah, I can't. If it's
The
not
Weaklings.
the Smithereens. Who?
The Weaklings just did it.
Ah, I see. Yeah, maybe that
Okay.
was that.
All right.
Yeah. Anyway, wait a minute. I'm looking it up online here to see who actually covered it. Let me see if it comes. A lot of people have done it. Smithereens did it. The Weaklings is not listed here. REM, the Custard Kings, Rico Pierce, who I've never heard of,
Nope.
and the Beat Bugs, which I believe is that cartoon series.
It's the kids, yeah.
So
It's like,
there we go.
And Ringo has covered it.
And Ringo.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't mention Ringo was on there, but yeah.
But
anyway, okay, there we go. So that's that.
the interesting thing to me about this is that they're also saying it's for his future compositions.
Right.
So that also means that Ringo has intentions of making more music. And it's not something that I take for granted because, he is 77. He's made 19 albums. His albums don't really sell that well, but this does cover anything that he might do in the future.
Well,
so to me, that's encouraging.
That's more of a PR term, really, because I mean, honestly speaking, press releases are written that way. I mean, we assume he's going to continue to record, and I'm not trying to say anything otherwise. I'm just saying that's a public relations kind of term.
Well, and also a living person who composes, who signs a new publishing contract, I think is always going to have the contract include future stuff, or else why would you be? I mean, you could you could sign it to administer your past catalog, But if you're still an active performer, composer, your future stuff's going to be included, I would think,
naturally. Oh, yeah. Especially, in a deal like this, yeah.
Okay. But it says there's over 150 titles in the catalog. So for a lot of people that are not aware of how much Ringo has written or co-written, that gives you an idea right there.
I know that part is kind of interesting because you don't think of Ringo as a composer.
I do.
So he had a slow start, but if you consider that the Beatles' official catalog was only like 204 tracks or something like that.
Right. Right.
And not all of those were, of course, originals, at least from the beginning. Ringo is, in a way, over 50 years caught up.
Yeah,
almost.
I guess so. But anyway, okay. Next piece of news is the Liverpool City Council is going to do some redevelopment in the Matthew Street area, where the Cavern Club is now located. Which is, and it says the aim was to bring. This is a BBC story. The aim was to bring an enhanced and more coordinated Beatles tourism offer to the area. Alan, you've been there.
Yeah, to tell you the truth, I can't see how you can bring more Beatles tourism to the area since virtually everything in the area has something to do with the Beatles. When I was, apart from the Cavern, when I was there was, I think, a Beatles-themed record store just across the street, and and everything else that you see around there, if it isn't specifically, quote, Beatles-themed, it's Beatles-themed in the sense that it was there when they were there, and so it's a historical place that's part of the Beatles story. So I'd be interested to know exactly what they're going to do to make it more...
Well, the last sentence here says the plans could involve the redevelopment of derelict and underused buildings and the creation of a, quote, more defined and usable public open space. So it sounds like they're going to do some tightening up, but also they're going to look at the buildings that that need to be upgraded or remodeled or that kind of thing. I mean, it's a typical redevelopment project, is what it sounds like.
I was there in 2000, and I was just thinking as we're talking. Yeah, I don't remember. Obviously the Cavern, as you mentioned, Alan, and a couple other record stores, but I don't remember as much that there was that much to do around there, and so it probably, this is 18 years later, so I haven't been there since then. It might look different, but I do remember thinking at the time that it could use some, not too much modernization, but a little bit more, maybe a little brighter, a little more, and I can see them saying, more open space for, maybe some outdoor concerts, some other festivals. They have some, I know, but I don't think it would hurt to redevelop that area. It'll be interesting to see what they're being a little vague there, it sounds like, as to what they're, precisely going to do, but I'll be very interested to see what this is going to be.
Yeah, and they're trying to keep it looking attractive, which you would want for something like that, which is basically a big part of their income.
Except that, historically, didn't it look unattractive? So they're sort of making an attractive scene of what was not an attractive place when the Beatles were there.
Well, at this time, and this is probably a bad comparison, but I'm going to compare it. Disneyland has been remodeled zillions of times, and it looks, and very little of it, a lot of it does not look the same as it did in 55. And so I think they're just kind of looking at keeping it looking nice, in that, in that kind of, in the same frame,
yeah, but I see what you're saying, Ellen, because, you don't want it to look plastic and fake, and, you do want to keep some authenticity. That's
you want to
true.
see, like on the corner, you want to see a guy with long sideburns and sort of greased back hair and a razor blade in his hand. That's what you want when you're going on Matthew Street.
Okay, I don't know if I do, but cool. I was good until the knife part.
They'll put up more statues. That's what they'll do.
They should do whatever they have to do to preserve it. so that it's as close to the way it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I feel.
I mean, yeah, that would be, that would be nice. I just have a feeling though that for modernization they'll probably do a little of both. Ken.
Yeah, maybe
Probably
put an elevator in the cavern and.
Okay. I think we've gone on long enough with that. The story that got a lot of buzz on Facebook this week is the story that Ed Sheeran has been rumored to have been cast in a new musical comedy film that envisions a world where he's the only one that remembers the Beatles. It says that the film is understood to have the working title "All You Need Is Love," which is interesting. But and everybody, the story I put up. This was the story I put up on my Beatles page on Facebook. Was written differently, but it had a lot of people going, "What? What are they thinking?" This makes a little more sense where he wakes up as the only person who can remember the Beatles. But how are they going to logically make that believable in the script? I can't guess how. But it's very strange. I mean, obviously, the attraction here for movie-going audiences of movie-going age is Ed Sheeran, and he's very popular and everybody knows him. I mean, and he's very well regarded. I know Peter Asher is a big fan of his, and so are a lot of other people too. I mean, his talent is well known, and I don't know. This is weird.
Yeah,
I think it sounds promising. I mean, imagine if you woke up. Imagine if you woke up and you were the only one who remembered the Beatles. You could write that whole catalog, put out an album. I mean, this really has potential.
Well, you got to admit it's a real unique idea.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like almost sounds like the type of idea that somebody said, "Let's do something nobody else would ever do."
I'll be interested to see what they do with it.
Yeah, I mean, Kit, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess I should be more open-minded and see. But yeah, that is a kind of an odd premise, to put it mildly. Also, Ed Sheeran. I mean, I totally see, as you said, how popular he is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sells a lot of records. But acting ability, I wonder. I haven't seen that. So who knows? I mean, that's, I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Has he acted? I haven't. I'm not a big fan of current movies. I mean, has he acted before?
The only thing I can think of, and I haven't seen this, but I heard that he did a guest spot on, I think it was Game of Thrones, because he's a huge Game of Thrones fan.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, and so he did like a little bit part in it, and he didn't exactly get stellar reviews.
Okay.
But,
all right.
Is there any word as to whether or not there'll be Beatles recordings used, or maybe Ed's performances of Beatles songs?
The two stories I saw mentioned nothing about that. So I mean, it could be or it couldn't be. I don't know, but there was no mention, and we all know how hard it is to get Lennon and McCartney music rights.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. We'll see. I mean, the fact that the Beatles are even mentioned, you would think that there is some kind of talk going on with Apple, but I don't know.
Well, maybe things are opening up because we've been hearing about Vivek Tiwari's TV series, and that he can actually use Beatles recordings for it.
Well, there's a difference there, because the Brian Epstein thing that Vivek Tiwari is doing is Brian Epstein, and that has the backing, that has the support of the Beatles themselves. I mean, and they're not, as you have said, they're very picky about what they allow their name tacked onto. At least I think so.
Yeah, I agree, but it's only recently with this and good old Frida, that something like that has happened. So maybe maybe things are opening up more.
Well,
Maybe
and
they're-
across the universe, let them use the songs, not the Beatles recordings, but the
Right.
songs were used.
Right.
Who knows? We'll probably. I'm sure we'll hear more about this, as time goes on. The next little piece of news is a short thing. A lot of our listeners probably heard about the passing of Milos Forman, a film director who did One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Amadeus, and Hair. But he's also known for a quote that we have authenticated. I hadn't seen it. I don't remember seeing it before, or at least I didn't remember hearing it. But he said, "I'm convinced the Beatles are partly responsible for the fall of communism." Now, we could do that. We were talking about this before we started taping, and we were going, we could do a whole show on that one. But interesting. But anyway, there's something for you to think about. Finally, there was a picture, or actually two more things. There was a picture of Yoko Ono posted on her Instagram account on the 10th that was captioned, "First day in the studio, feeling good." And if that's true, if she's back in the studio, that's hell of news. That's a hell of a good news. I'm very happy to hear that, and I think a lot of people will be too. Finally, just today, Julian's Auctions and the Hard Rock Cafe and Beatles Story announced what they call Discovery Day, coming to the Hard Rock Cafe in New York on May 17th. And what that's going to do is they're going to have experts there to evaluate Beatles and rock and roll memorabilia for free. So if you're in the New York area, you can have your stuff evaluated. And and the press release says, for more information or to pre-book a free face-to-face valuation, visit BeatlesStory.com/events. Okay.
And there's one other thing.
Uh-oh.
No, since she mentioned Yoko before, one of her songs is actually being used in a TV commercial. So, I've been noticing in the last week or so that Yes, I'm Your Angel is being used in commercials now for PetSmart, which makes a lot of sense because many of us look at our pets as being our own angels. So congratulations to Yoko for that, because I don't recall there ever being a time when any of Yoko's songs have been used in commercials before.
I don't either. I can't imagine one has ever been used. That's interesting. I assume is it a cover version? I assume.
Oh yeah, it's not Yoko's recording of it. No.
Okay. Wow. Anyway,
they could have used Dogtown.
Okay. Okay. I'd let you guys loose, and what happens? Boom. Anyway, this week we're going to talk about underappreciated Beatles and solo songs with Dr. Kit O'Toole, the author of the Deep Beatles column. Right, Kit?
That's right. Yeah.
That's right. Yep. See, gave Kit a plug for Deep Beatles. And I think what we'll do is we'll go through these one at a time. Is that how we want to do this, guys? One song at a time, starting with the Beatles songs.
Well, these are all songs that Kit herself has picked.
Right.
These are not ones that we picked. So I just want to clarify that.
Yeah. And so, Kit, we'll let you go through these one at a time, and we will react one at a time. So,
okay. Sounds good.
Go ahead.
All right. Well, let's kick off. We'll sort of do this chronologically, I guess. We could start with "There's a Place," which I think is, but it's another example of how B-sides and album tracks that the Beatles just sort of tossed onto them. That they were just as stellar in many cases as the big hits were. And this is an example. I've always just thought the harmonies on this are just classic Beatles type harmonies. And I also think it's important that it's an early indicator of where the Beatles were going, particularly Lennon and McCartney in their songwriting. That this is not just about romantic love. This is about contemplation. This is about reflection. It's of course similar to Beach Boys in My Room. It's a similar idea. and that being, that love is wonderful, but being, to be alone and be with your thoughts, or if you're feeling and low and blue, as they sing, that you can go to this space. And I just think for a so-called pop group of that time, 1963, that was a pretty cerebral, song to do. And I just think it holds up, and again, is just an indicator of where they were going to go. You're talking about contemplation, things like I'm Only Sleeping, Tomorrow Never Knows. And of course, John would continue that with, Watching the Wheels and many others. But this is where it started. And so I've just always thought this was a standout track.
Okay. Alan?
But Kit, did you feel it was underrated?
Oh, I think so. Absolutely. Because it's, now I hesitate, because I know among Beatles fans this isn't like a super rare track. But it's amazing to me how many casual fans have never heard of this. And that's why. Seriously, I mean, I've just been astounded. When I wrote about this in Deep Beatles years ago, I mean, there were people who said, "Oh, I forgot about this." It's just amazing to me.
I think it could be because in the U.S. at least, it apart from I guess introducing the Beatles, it never got on an album. It didn't make it onto the early Beatles, which is most of the Please Please Me album, where it used to live, or still lives.
Right.
And even when they put together Hey Jude with all of the bits and pieces and singles, they left that off too. I think it wasn't until the Rarities album that it turned up. So maybe
same thing with Misery.
Yeah, and I think maybe in the case of those two tracks, maybe if you can argue that it's underrated, it could be because of that, because it just was less available. Although you could always get, I think there was a Tolle single that had it on it, and once people started collecting the stuff, you'd get it one way or the other. But I agree with what Kit said. I mean, it does remind me also of the Beach Boys in my room, except that, like you were saying, Kit, it actually does go a bit further in the sense of being cerebral, in that for the Beach Boys, the place that they're going to go is in their room, and for John, it's in my mind. It's
right.
So I think that's an interesting difference. Both great songs.
Absolutely.
Ken?
It's interesting you use the word cerebral, because that's the word that Paul used, I think, in the book many years from now when he described it, because, he was pointing out the fact that you were going into your mind. And so, like the songs you were pointing out, it kind of paved the way for those. I also think of Strawberry Fields in that regard. You're talking about your mind, maybe your imagination, that kind of thing. So, of the early Beatles compositions, it's not one that you hear all that much about. And they had a lot of hits in their early years, and that was a B-side. It was the B-side of Twist and Shout. And I remember playing There's a Place even more than Twist and Shout when I was a little kid. So, I definitely agree with you. Usually songs that are not hits tend not to get the airplay. It's kind of hard for me to imagine when you say deep tracks to someone like me. None of the Beatles catalog is deep.
Right.
If it's been released, it's like the alphabet. You should know all the songs. But for the average person who doesn't really study it, who basically knows the hits or album cuts that are very popular, what's on the red and blue collections, a song like There's a Place is a deep cut. And so I definitely think it's an underrated song.
Okay. In I'm going to take a different tack here, and I'm going to say I think more of the song in a melodic sense than in a lyrical sense. I actually, because the song is a relatively early song, I'm not really certain. Although obviously, if Paul says it was, I mean, there's nothing I can say, but it sounds more to me like the lyrics were kind of a second thought, and it was really the melody that was important there, because the song itself, the way the song is structured, I think is better than the lyrics, and So I think that's the important part of this song. But in any event, I mean, if Paul thinks otherwise, what can I say? But just listening to the song in my head, it really sounds, especially for a 1963 song, it sounds more like it was less serious than the words. It was more serious lyrically than it was. I mean, more serious melodically than it was lyrically. Anybody want to yell at me on that one?
I don't know. To me, melodically, it's kind of primitive, really.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I think "Please Please Me" is a far more developed song than "There's a Place." It's pretty simple. I mean, I like the song. I don't mean to sound critical of it, but I don't. I gravitate more towards the words on that one. Mm-hmm. And I wonder, I don't think they probably would have heard the Beach Boys in my room by the time they did this.
Right.
But I wonder if they knew, because they've mentioned West Side Story, I wonder if they knew Leonard Bernstein somewhere, the first line of which is "There's a Place for Us."
Mm-hmm.
Well, in fact, Paul told Barry Miles in that book that Ken just mentioned earlier that they loosely based the song on the lyrics from Somewhere. He told me that, so that's very. Not that I'm surprised you point that out, but very astute. I'm not surprised. Interesting too is John said in a 1980 interview that he viewed it as sort of he said it's my attempt at a sort of Motown thing. Huh. And I'm assuming, maybe he means, the harmonica. That doesn't jump out at me as much, I have to admit. But, that's, he said that was one of his sources of inspiration too.
Okay.
Let's
go to song number 2, Kit.
All right. Song number 2, one of my all-time personal favorites, "I'll Be Back." Alan just mentioned a minute ago about how he, thought that melodically that "There's a Place" wasn't quite as interesting. This, to me, the chord changes just do it for me on this one. I just think I love the chord changes. It has such a melancholy sound. It's and of course John in 1972 in an interview with Hit Parader, like he did with many of his songs, said, "Oh, it was a nice tune, but the middle wasn't that great." Well, I have to respectfully disagree with Mr. Lennon here. And as we know, it started out as a waltz that he wanted to, he originally conceived of it as that, but when they tried it, the lyrics were just too hard to sing it. So then they switched to 4/4. Interesting, too, in the early versions, they used electric guitars rather than acoustic, which I can't imagine, because I just think the acoustic guitars, that's the other thing that makes this for me. Mm-hmm. Again, it just accentuates how gorgeous these chord changes are. Kind of like "There's a Place," I also like it because it shows the Lennon and McCartney, further composition, their experimentation in composition. There really isn't a chorus to this. It's, basically 3 bridges that anchor the whole thing.
Right.
If you look at it that way. And so, again, who is doing that, in pop songs back then? It has the lyrics, are really revealing a falter, the conflict and despair over, kind of a faltering, delicate, fragile relationship. And there are just so many great lines from this. You could find better things to do than to break my heart again. That's that to me is such a standout line. He's really revealing his inner conflict. It is just such a complicated, without using too many cliches here, but just a deep song to me. And it's just always been a standout. This should have been a hit, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. I don't know why, why it's an album track, but so that's my second pick.
Okay, Ken?
Kit, you sound like me. I've picked this song several times, and I brought it up on this show. many times for the same reasons you just said. And, most songs typically have, two verses and a chorus, then back to the verse. But like you just said, there's 3 bridges there. It's very different in terms of the way that it's structured. And just the way that it starts off, it's in a major key in A, and then it flips automatically to A minor right at the beginning of the song. Yep. And to take a twist like that was very unusual. And I just think a lot of work was poured into this song, and it's only like 2 minutes and 20 seconds. It's packed with a lot of work put into it. To have all these different sections strung together, even the part where John sings, "I thought that you would realize," that only appears there. It doesn't repeat again. So it keeps you interested by having all these different sections strung together the way that it does, and it flows so perfectly well. I really think it's a brilliant piece of work and very overlooked.
Okay. Alan?
Yeah, see, I have a hard time thinking really of any Beatles tracks as overlooked because, the Beatles tracks, sort of like like what Ken said about how if the Beatles put it out, it's like a letter of the alphabet. You should know it. But so I don't know about the overlooked part, but I agree. It's a great track, and there's a lot of really nice touches in it that I just love. And one of them is like right in the section that Ken mentioned. I thought that you would realize that part. While John sings that line, you hear the accompaniment doing this interesting sort of chromatic descent. He's singing, I thought that you would realize, and you hear da 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 da. It's just great sort of contrary movement, and that's the kind of thing that always catches my ear. But also the harmonies. I mean, it's just a beautiful track. And to me, now I don't know whether this is because I grew up with the American albums and eventually set them aside and listened pretty much just to the British albums for a very long time, but I still have trouble thinking of this song as being on Hard Day's Night. It, to me, seems to go with the album we were talking about last week, Beatles for Sale. Thematically, that major to minor thing at the very beginning, you have better things to do than break my heart again. I mean, it just seems to belong with Beatles for Sale, and that could be because I think I heard it a lot on Beatles 65 with those other tracks when I was growing up. So, yeah, it's an interesting track that for me sort of slides between these 2 albums, and but it is a great track. So
that's a really good point, though, about how it sounds like it would belong more on Beatles for Sale, because it does. It's because that is a bit of a it's a bit of a darker album, and it has
an acoustic guitar too.
Acoustic guitars, and again, some of the other songs in there, the chord changes are very different. So yeah, this does seem like it sticks out a bit on the Hard Day's Night soundtrack. That's a really good point.
I would love to hear somebody cover this with electric guitars and do a real kind of. I mean, this has always been kind of one of those. I guess to use Kit's term, a deep favorite. I mean, this song has always had a special place for me. I've always loved it, and you can imagine John, strutting. I mean, bouncing up and down, singing it, and it's just a fantastic song. The chord changes, the words are. Comparing it to There's a Place, this one is not as innocent, and that's another reason, and that's another reason, that this is really nice. Why this hasn't been, has kind of stayed buried is a real mystery, because it is such a fantastic song. That I don't understand. Maybe in the crush of some of the other songs they were promoting and everything, that's why, but it really did not deserve to be buried that way and to be, to be somewhat obscured. It really doesn't. It's a great song. So,
Hear.
Kit, next.
All right. Next we have I think this is one of their not only a bit more overlooked but more important songs,
Hmm.
which is The Word from Rubber Soul. And the reason I picked The Word is, first of all, I mean, I like the song generally, but lyrically, again, this is another shift, and to me, this is, I kind of I use the terms, Beatles, like from, maybe Rubber Soul on, though you could argue even a little bit before then, but, Beatles 2.0 is what I call it,
Mm.
when they're starting to, shift away from the earlier stuff. And The Word, to me, this is where they start, really shifting into Beatles 2.0, because the word, I mean, this isn't, the word is about love, but of course it is a, not strictly a romantic love. This is, I call it, love with a capital L. That it's a larger sense. And to me, I mean, this is a preview of the summer of '67. It's just a change in tone, and a preview of All You Need Is Love.
Hmm.
And I just think it's interesting how John takes on the role of, I mean, he's almost, it's something that he has just discovered and wants to tell everyone about.
Hmm.
It's not just an emotion. He calls it, the word is just the way. It's, everywhere I go, I hear it said in the good and the bad books that I've read, and he, and now this is the main line here. Now that I know what I feel must be right, I'm here to show everybody the light. I mean, he's here to deliver a message, and it's just, to me, it's so different than, what we were just talking about in the previous songs. This is a larger message. And again, he would go on to, all of them would go on to discuss this topic more. And also, I like the guitar in it. Of course, George Martin plays the harmonium in it, and great, wonderful harmonies. That's of course a Beatles trademark, and that they continue it in this. So, but I think thematically, it's a very important song, because we're really, as I said, we're starting to see that shift in topic, and tone of their songs. So that's why I picked that one.
Okay.
Mm.
Alan?
Yeah, I can't disagree. I suppose to the degree that anything can be an obscure Beatles track, this one, it doesn't get covered a lot. It doesn't get, you don't hear it an awful lot unless you're playing the whole album. But I think John has talked about the line of connection between the word and All You Need Is Love.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, it sort of, in a way, very purposely is a preview of, well, I guess you can't say it was purposely a preview of the summer of 1967, because they didn't know when they did this was.
No.
But it but it does seem to be that he was sort of working on the same idea and perfecting it over several years, starting with the word, culminating with All You Need Is Love.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, for me, all the tracks on Rubber Soul are love songs from different kinds of perspectives. It's like, not that love songs are uncommon, but to have an album where just about every track looks at it from a different perspective is sort of interesting to me. And the word,
Mm-hmm.
Holds its place there by being not about romantic love, but about the concept of love as, an empowering thing, for the world
Mm-hmm.
generally, that, John was working up to, and All You Need Is Love. So, yeah, good choice.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank
Ken?
you.
Mm. Everything Alan said. I mean, it really is. It's the start of the universal message, and it is a precursor to All You Need Is Love.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love, like Alan just said about Rubber Soul, all the songs really are about love, but they're different angles and different perspectives. And, some relationships work out. There's a lot of them that do not in Rubber Soul. But the word takes a whole different turn by making it more about, the word is love for the world, really. And I love the changes in the music there, especially towards the end where there's that instrumental passage. Then they start singing say the word love over and over again, which is a little bit different from what they sing in the rest of the song. Instead of say the word and you'll be free, but just keep repeating, say the word, love. And it's just, it's a very different way to end the song. I always like when the Beatles introduce something brand new to a song that wasn't in the rest of the song before that. And then they end the song that way. Kind of like Ticket to Ride was. You know, you know, Paul was very proud of the ending of Ticket to Ride where they sang the My Baby Don't Care part. And that was nowhere in the rest of the song. You know, but the word is kind of like that, the way it ends.
I think there may also be a quasi-religious element to this too. Because I mean, I am a Jewish guy. It's not my lit, but I believe the Gospel of John begins with, in the beginning was the Word. And I kind of suspect, I can't really say for sure because it's not me, but I kind of suspect that anybody who was raised studying Christianity would have made that connection. The song's called The Word, and John is saying, the word is love. I kind of, for you people who did grow up as Christians, is there anything to that? Did it have any resonance?
I did, and I to be honest, it didn't hit me that way. But that's an interesting thought. There's as far as songs that, you mentioned All You Need Is Love. I happen to be looking in David Rowley's All Together Now, and he connects it with Give Peace a Chance, which is interesting. However, my interpretation of this song is that you can smell the marijuana in this song so badly.
Oh yeah.
So much it's unbelievable. And I think that's what's really here. I think they were smoking. They were smoking while they were doing this one. There's no question about it, because the way the words run, spread the word and you'll be free. Spread the word and be like me. Spread the word I'm thinking of. Have you heard the word is love? The rhyming is so simple. It's so fine. It's sunshine. It's the word love. It didn't sound like there was a whole lot of intellectualism going on here. It sounded like they were just doing it. They were making it real easy on themselves. That's what I'm thinking here. That's not to say I don't like the song's awful. I think that's basically what was going on here. No. Am I wrong?
No, they actually, John and Paul, I'm trying to remember which one said, oh yeah, I think it was Paul, that they were stoned when they wrote that. Absolutely.
And you can see, you can see it.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But, whether intentionally or unintentionally, as the case may be, I'm not sure, but it just seemed like, again, I just remember when I first started getting into the Beatles, I started getting into them in the 80s, when I was in 8th grade, and as I, started going on, this was a song that really stood out to me that I just thought, wow, they're talking about something different now. This is not what they were talking about before. And it just always struck me as a song that just, the drug culture plays a part in that for sure.
Right.
It does. But it just, to me, it just was a preview of, as we said, all you need is love. And it, it just really struck me that I thought, wow, this is what was explored in 1967. They were ahead of the curve there. Were pretty amazing. Again, whether they intentionally or unintentionally.
Yeah.
Okay. Next one, Kit.
All right. Next one is one that it's a George one, and I just always appreciated this for its offbeat qualities. I Want to Tell You, from Revolver. Now, preface this by saying, yes, this is not a super, super deep track, but I do think it's something you don't hear. You don't hear it on the radio.
Right.
And I think it's underappreciated in terms of how innovative it is. Specifically, that galloping, dissonant piano. That absolutely fascinates me about this song. And that is the perfect accompaniment to what George Harrison is singing about in the song, which is, and the English major in me loves this. It's about words. It's about language. That he's, and he said, and I mean mine, the lyrics addressed, he said, the avalanche of thoughts that are so hard to write down or say or transmit. And of course, he says constantly, my head is filled with things to say, but all the words, they seem to slip away. He's trying to, perhaps if we really want to read a lot into this could also be about, how he progressed as a songwriter. The act of songwriting. Again, that may be overanalyzing it, but I mean, you could certainly, but what is interesting is then at one point when he says, I feel hung up and I don't know why, I don't mind, I could wait forever, I've got time. And that reflects other songs that not just that he wrote, but particularly John, about the benefits of slowing down. Turn off your mind, relax and float downstream, surrender to the void. I'm only sleeping, keeping an eye on the world going by my window, taking my time. It's that same kind of thing that in some ways George, wants to spill all these words out and wants to communicate, but on the other hand, he's saying, but, I need to slow down. I've got time. I need to, think this through. The harmonies are tight, as always. I feel like a broken record saying this, but I mean, the harmonies are just, perfect. And I love at the end, as the song fades out, that vocal that Paul does. I believe it's melisma is how you pronounce it. The Indian style of singing. And, it's kind of his interpretation of it, where he sings the word, holds the word time while oscillating among various notes. And what an interesting, addition to that, and reflecting George's continuing interest in Indian music. There's just so many fascinating aspects of this song and some, experimental kind of stuff. So that's why I chose this one.
Okay. Ken?
It's a track I really love, but then again, I love all the Beatles songs. But I sometimes think of the beginning of the song, how it fades up. It reminds me in that regard with 8 Days a Week. Sure. I love the way that the song ends with the harmonies fading at the end there, kind of like Good Day Sunshine does on the same album. And just everything about it. Great melody, great hooks. I love the drum fills that Ringo does there in between the verses. Yes. Really powerful, makes a big difference. I think it's kind of significant that George chose to lead off his tour of Japan with this song.
Yeah.
It makes for a really good opening song in a way. Yeah, it's an outstanding track. I don't think, all the Beatles songs are good, as I said. I think George, I love all of George's stuff, He may not have given us as much as Lennon and McCartney songwriting-wise, but every song to me was a winner. You've got the classics there, you got the lesser-known songs, but less was more with George and the Beatles. So
okay, for me, the George's singing is what propels this song. I love his vocals on this song. Yeah, I think that's what really lifts the song. Maybe more than anything. I mean, the instrumentation is good too, but I love his vocals on this. And it's too bad. I think the title probably contributes to the fact that it kind of gets forgotten a little bit, but it really shouldn't, because the lyrics are very philosophical. Yeah, and so, but yeah, this is a great song. Anyway. So let's see. Is that
Alan?
It?
Oh, Alan.
Alan.
I'm sorry, Alan. Alan, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I didn't mean to bypass you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I really like the texture of this song. As Kit mentioned, the piano, the combination really of the guitar and the piano, and the sort of the slow gallop of the accompaniment. It's sort of a standard rock track and not a standard rock track. I mean, standard rock instrumentation, but it's different in this way that George was getting to be all the time. I mean, he has 3 songs on Revolver, Taxman, Love You Too, and this, and they are 3 absolutely different kinds of songs, 2 Western, but they're very different, and then Love You Too is Indian. So, yeah, it really, I think the 3 of them together just sort of show how George was developing so quickly. And I can kind of see, I Want to Tell You, as I think as Kit said, possibly also be about not just wanting to tell you, but wanting to write songs to tell you, and the way his songwriting was developing. So yeah, definitely interesting track. Definitely not one you hear all the time.
Okay, Kit, the last Beatles song.
Yes, last but not least, we return to George, and I picked For You Blue. Now, part of the reason I picked this is, when I write the Deep Beatles column, it's so interesting, some of the reactions I get. When I wrote about For You Blue and I Me Mine, separately, I had some readers say, "Why are you wasting your time writing about that song? That's nothing."
Huh.
I mean, it was really weird, the reactions I got for both those songs.
Really?
They thought, that they seemed to think, they were the weak links of Let It Be. And, I mean, not true at all, in my opinion. And, and For You Blue, I enjoy because it's just pure George Harrison. It's not experimental, like I Want to Tell You or Love You Too, or the songs Alan just mentioned. This is a return to his roots. But I also think you could say this is a return to the Beatles' roots as well. I mean, this is, their music is Kent draws from blues and country and all, and as well as rock and a bunch of other genres as well. But this song is more about blues and country. And, and I like how George talked about that. He said it was a simple 12-bar song following all the normal 12-bar principles, except that it's happy-go-lucky, which I thought was great. Not a typical blues song, and he just sounds like he's having fun recording. All we hear about is how horrible the Let It Be session, Get Back / Let It Be sessions were. They were all fighting, and this is an instance where they sound like they're having a great time, and it's like you're eavesdropping on a jam session, a really really good jam session, but. And I think it's, and also I love the slide guitar on it, which, of course, this surprises many people that it's John playing that, not George. But I think he, I'm not saying John was a master slide guitarist, but I mean, he got the job done, and it's just, and, hearing George egging him on and go, Johnny, go. I mean, it's just, really makes you smile. It's I think a charming song, and again, I think it just brings the Beatles back full circle to their roots. I think it, and also, as I said, it just showed that there were moments toward the end, when all we hear about is how much they were fighting, that there were these moments where they'd come together, no pun intended, and really just enjoy performing, enjoy collaborating and enjoying that chemistry that they had. So no, I don't think this is a weak link at all. I think it's just a really charming song and has its merits.
Okay, Alan?
Yeah, I don't think it's a weak link either. I think Let It Be, generally speaking, is a weak album, but it's as good as a lot of other stuff on there. And I don't necessarily think it's the best of the songs that George played to his friends during the Let It Be sessions. I think, a lot of those things that ended up on All Things Must Pass were, maybe better songs than For You Blue. But For You Blue is kind of fun. I mean, it's kind of it's a blues, and it has John playing, a lap slide, and it's, it's kind of, it's light, but it's fun. Mm-hmm. I kind of like it. I mean, I've never sort of begrudged its spot on Let It Be, let's say.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I really like it. I think given the nature of the Get Back album, it fits in perfectly because, Get Back was supposed to be the Beatles warts and all, and this has a very kind of rough quality to it. And I love the fact that George brings in Elmore James in this too. I think that's kind of cool. Elmore James, for those who, and I'm sure most everybody knows, but Elmore James was a slide guitarist, a blues slide guitarist, who's considered a pioneer of that form of playing, and it was very cool for George to mention him. And the slide guitar solo is very cool. So, but yeah, this is a really good song, and I wouldn't call this, I wouldn't pull this down at all. I think it's one of the better songs on Let It Be for sure. So anyway, Ken, how about you?
I kind of agree with what Alan said. Two key words: light and fun. And that's what I think of with this song. It's kind of difficult for me. I want to just separate the song as a song itself. I like the song a lot. It is kind of difficult when you think about, as Alan said, all the songs that George was writing at the time that ended up on All Things Must Pass, that they worked on, which are stronger to me than For You Blue and I Me Mine. Although I love I Me Mine a lot. Yeah. When you think that those were the two songs the Beatles used in Let It Be, it's like the only mistake to me the Beatles ever made musically is not to work on more of the songs from All Things Must Pass and to have those two songs in there. But I've always liked For You Blue. It's a very pleasant song. It's fun to listen to. So, yeah.
Okay. We will continue this discussion next week with Kit, where she will give us her underappreciated solo songs. You can get a hold of the show by writing Things We Said Today radio show at gmail.com. We have a Facebook page, Things We Said Today Beatles Radio Fans. We have a Twitter account, Things We Said Fab. And I'm going to quickly go around the board and tell everybody, or let everybody say where you can get a hold of us. Starting with Kit. Kit, you want to tell everybody where people can get a hold of you?
Sure. You can go to my website, kitotoole.com. I am on Facebook. My author page is actually called Kit O'Toole's Keynotes. So look that up. And I'm on Twitter at Kit O'Toole.
Okay. Ken?
You can reach me at my email address, which is everylittlething@att.net. Also, my website is kenmichaelsradio.com. I should mention that in my Beatles trivia page, where you can win one of 9 prizes every week, for quite a while there sits Kit's book called Songs We Were Singing, Guided Tours to the Beatles' Lesser-Known Tracks. Not only can you win her book on my trivia page, but starting this week, this coming Friday, which is the 20th, I'm doing a special contest. I'm bringing back the famous Kit O'Toole kit to give away on my website, which is giving away her book, the Beatles book, Songs We Were Singing, also her book on Michael Jackson called Michael Jackson FAQ, and a tote bag for the book, Songs We Were Singing. And that's at kenmichaelsradio.com.
Okay.
So be sure to visit the website.
Okay, Alan?
The easiest way to reach me is on Facebook at Alan Kozin or Alan Kozin Remixed.
And you can get a hold of me at BeatlesExaminer@gmail.com. I have a Beatles page on Facebook called Beatles News and Information that has all of a sudden been booming with new members, and I thank you all for joining. And you can see my articles on Access.com, Variety.com, and Billboard.com. And we're going to get out of here and do this again next week. For Kit O'Toole, for Ken Michaels, and for Alan Kozin, this is Steve Marinucci for Things We Said Today. Thanking also Fab4Radio.com for airing the show on the weekends, and for Michael Lynch for writing our great theme song. We look forward to seeing you next week, and we will see you next time.